Dear, that was a bit frightening for you, wasn't it? Good morning, everybody. Paul here, just a quick video to catch up on a few things. Very sorry that I had to leave you all so quickly and missed you all at the meeting. Very sadly, I had quite a bit I wanted to cover with you, and that's why I thought I'd just put together this short video now to go through a few of those things that maybe I didn't get the opportunity to cover off. If it does mean that I go over a couple of things that have already been mentioned or covered at the meeting, I apologise, and I'm sure you'll, at least it will be backing it up and verifying it in your mind if that happens. So a few things I want to go through. Objective of this particular video, and the reason I've done a video is it'd be far easier than sending you a huge email, which might be difficult to digest. So really, a few objectives for me for the video is I really want to get just a very open discussion going. If there's any issues at all with regard to the fast track training, that's something I'd like to know about. It's a learning process for us. We always said at the very beginning, this is brand new for us as it is for you. Obviously, we had our first training workshop in-house, and I know that you've all been working with your Masters mentors, all of you new TLOs. And obviously it will be really, really good to know what we like, what we don't like, and any feedback. Now, I'm sure that some of this may have come through at the meeting, and I apologise if we're duplicating there. But if there's any particular points you want to email me on, then I'll be delighted to answer as best I possibly can. And it is a continual improvement process. So we do want to get better at what we're doing. We realise we probably haven't ticked all the boxes yet, but, we're moving forward. The other thing I want to do is to confirm some dates, some forthcoming dates, so everybody can get their diaries out and start putting things aside. And I'll go straight into that now, if I may. It's probably the easiest way. So the first and the foremost is the forthcoming start of our joint group observer meetings on the Saturdays, the group observing meetings. Now, what we're going to do this year is start them slightly later. We normally start at the beginning of April, but to coincide with the signing off of the new associates, the new TLOs, we're going to start it slightly later. Now, the reason for that is that we've already got enough people in waiting, associates in waiting, to get everybody their own associate at the beginning of the year, which is quite good. So what that means is we don't want to have a group observing day before we sign people off, because we are simply going to get inundated and we're going to have 2 or 3 riders per observer, which we're not going to do this year. So we'll come on to a little bit more about the actual sign off, but of course hopefully everybody's going to get signed off and officially approved on the 13th of April. So we're planning to have our first group observed session on the Saturday, the 20th of April. Now that will be the 3rd Saturday, and normally we run these on the 1st and 3rd. So the 3rd Saturday for this year is always going to be Junction 4 services in Telford. And that means that the next one after that will be the 4th of May, and that will be at the Honda Centre, which is then the 1st Saturday. So it will be the Honda Centre 1st Saturday, then Junction 4 on the 3rd Saturday. We will continue to use textvertising. So I'm sure that many of you trainee observers, when you were actually associates, would have actually received text from us on the Thursday before, just advising of the meeting and asking you to come back with a simple yes or no. Well, we continue to do that for observers. And it's really important to us, if you could please, you don't have to really put much to it, just respond yes or no when you get those texts. That lets Daryl, myself, and Dave Lowe know how many people are going to be attending, how many observers we can count on. Now, it's especially important this year because we are going to run a strict policy of first come, first served for our associates, which means that once we have achieved a full capacity of the observers we're expecting, we will have to go back and tell certain associates that unfortunately there's no ride available because they're a little bit too late, if that becomes a problem. Hopefully, with doubling our observer numbers, that's not going to be a problem because not everybody turns up at once, and it's certainly going to be far less of a problem than it was in the past. But that's what we're going to do. We are not going to have a situation this year of doubling up, whereby observers go out with 2 or 3 associates. It's not fair. We've experienced it ourselves and we've learned our lessons. So that's a big one. Then we move on to our social rides. So our social rides will commence a little earlier. The social rides, which everybody, of course, is invited to. That will be associates. That won't be new associates yet. They will not be invited to the first social ride, purely and simply because we've not even had a chance to have a look at them, and it wouldn't be fair. So in reality, all existing associates, members, those that are already in training and have undertaken some training with us, and of course all observers will be invited to the social ride. Now the first one is going to be on the 7th of April. We normally do these on the 2nd Sunday, so that will be on the 7th of April. I believe that Steve Clark might be interested in running that one, which is going to be, if I'm not mistaken, a very, very good trip into Wales on some of the roads that Nick Sanders has actually specifically chosen as being some of the best roads in mid Wales. Having ridden some of them when I went out with Nick Sanders on his Mac run, I can assure you that they're really good. So hopefully we can then move on from there. That, of course, is not the 2nd Sunday, the 7th of April. That's the 1st Sunday. Now, the only reason that we've changed that is that the 2nd Sunday actually clashes with the Raven Bigger Breakfast, which is a shame. But on that particular event, we didn't want the two to clash. So we've actually scheduled that for the 7th of April. Thereafter, they will be the 2nd Sunday generally, unless there's another clash, which we'll advise you about. Okay, so that's those points. Some of the other things I just wanted to cover off quickly. Obviously, I'm going to go through a little bit about LOPS forms and signing off associate forms. It's come back to me, a little bit of feedback, that there's perhaps a little bit of confusion still on exactly how we should be marking these forms. And I hope to be able to address that on this video for you, so that we can eliminate that confusion and everybody's got clarity on exactly how to move forward. This is really, really important because we need to be consistent in what we're doing. If we're not consistent in what we're doing, then we're going to have a problem because it will kind of dissipate outwards and everybody will be doing it differently. The whole point of what we're trying to achieve now in IM Road Smart is to get that level of consistency. So I wanted to put this out to all observers and trainee local observers so that we're all on the same page. Okay, so the other thing that I just wanted to mention was we've got a time taken for training. I know Daryl touched upon this and there were some comments around that at the meeting, so thank you for the feedback. I think one of the questions was what if someone actually needs 20 runs? Well, as Daryl mentioned, the average that IM Road Smart are looking for is potentially 8 runs, which should be enough for most people to get through. Some people are going to be a little bit more, some people are going to be a little bit less. But what we have to be mindful of is that if we extend somebody's training too far, it's going to impact on that observer's ability to be able to train somebody else. And every year we end up taking probably 12 to 15 people across who then follow through into the next year. Now, the problem with that, of course, is that if that happens, they have a break, generally over the Christmas, over the winter. They then come back to us in March, April, somewhere around there, and they've already stepped back probably 4 or 5 places, and we have to start the training all over again, which actually means that sometimes one associate can take almost 2 years to get through, anywhere up to. We need to try and be tougher on that. And if people are not getting through, we need to understand and realise why. And that's why Daryl and I this year are going to not be doing much observing ourselves. We've got enough observers to be doing that now. We're going to be doing more in the way of QA and helping out and being available. So if you have somebody who gets to 10 runs and they're not ready yet for their test, in your opinion, what we would like to do is we would like that you come back to myself and let me know, and either Daryl or I will come along, we'll arrange to come along and do a QA. It may be that we'll make out that we're doing the QA on you, but in actual fact, we are surreptitiously doing the QA on the other party, and we will look to put a development plan together if we can, if we feel that there is a scope to be able to do it, or if it's purely and simply that I'm afraid the associate is not picking up, or they've gone as far as we believe they can go, then I'm afraid at that point we may have to make some decisions, because after all, we have got other associates out there that we have to consider. All right. The IM are trying to entice us and other groups to run fixed courses where you actually do it in 8 runs or you're out. Now, at the moment, we're resisting that because I think that's a little harsh. It's inflexible, and we don't really want to do that. But I think we can find a good halfway house by having the 10 ride rule in there that says, if it goes to 10 rides and you're still having an issue, come back to us and we will support you and help you and try and get that rider through. That's our first aim. If we can't do that, then of course we've got to look at, we've got to look at the situation as it is. Also this year, of course, young rider, driver, Barry Walters, welcome on board as young rider ambassador. Barry will be helping young riders get through the test or get to test, and offering a bit of extra advice, an extra helping hand, and assisting the observer. It's not in any way interfering with the observer they're allocated with. It's just really that we have found on the young driver side that the young people are perhaps, let's say, a little bit more fickle, and they start something and don't necessarily always follow it through. So what we're looking to do here is to make sure that we've got somebody on hand to try and help them through. The other notable welcome that we have is for Dave Lowe, who's very kindly taken on the role of Associate Coordinator for Bikes. That's going to be a really increasingly important role this year, because we are going to be effectively doubling our numbers of observers, and hopefully doubling our numbers of associates. So to manage all of that is going to be quite a task. And Dave is going to be assisting Daryl and myself in helping allocate people to observers, checking on progress, making sure that everything's going through as it should, and just generally offering you help, advice, and allocation. He'll also probably be helping us with some of the text advertising as we go on. I've also set up this year something a little bit different. We're looking to run one of these in March we've got 11 plus 3 new young associates all ready to go, young rider associates. So we've got about 15 people already ready to run, as well as we already have 12 people ready in training. So that's why everybody will be fully accommodated this year. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be running workshops for associates before they actually start. So we're going to have a workshop in March. We're just looking to finalise dates. I've already put a presentation together of about 70 slides, a little bit like we did with the observers, but we're going to be doing that for associates to give them a head start and to kick them off. Obviously, we do have to be mindful of numbers, but any national observers, local observers who might feel that they'd like to attend some of those, just let me know. And we'd be delighted if you come along as helpers, or if you just want to come along and involve yourself. Okay, but as I say, we have just got to watch numbers on that now, and we'll come back to that. So on to dates for your diary. Dates for your diary. I've already given the dates for the runs and for the social rides. So some other dates for your diary. 19th of March in the evening, we have an event planned for anybody. This is car and bike, but bike will be specifically interested. Anybody who wants to come along, members, observers, trainee local observers, LOAs, and that will be at the Honda Centre. And what they're kindly doing for us is they are they've got their workshop guys there, and it's a bit of a social evening for SAMM, but they're also going to give us a demonstration of all the modern electronic rider aids that there are on motorcycles, how it affects the ride, how it affects the dynamics of the steering, the braking, the motorcycle itself, all of the different types of things that are coming in. So this is really going to be useful to observers particularly, because it will give a good understanding of many of the modern rider aids and how it can be used. And of course, we should actually be checking on this with associates when we go through what we're doing now. So that is on the 19th of March. Full details will follow very shortly. I'm just in the process of talking to the Honda Centre at the moment, but it has been confirmed as a date. Then, of course, I've already mentioned the social ride on the 7th of April. On the 13th of April, during the daytime, we have the Trainee Local Observer final sign-off. And I think you've already had details of that, but that's going to be the day when we get together. We do the final bits that we need to do to make sure that everybody is ready to launch into their new observing, which will only be coming up the following week. That'll be a kind of a workshop, very much like the last one. There won't be any road work involved in it because we've already done that with your observers, and we'd be very, very happy that that's the case. So at that one, we will hope to approve and sign off everybody that's gone through as fully fledged local observers. That's something that I'm able to do on the day, even though we then have to report that through to the IMI, and it could take a week or two before you get certification. You will be available, and as soon as I say that you're ready, then you are able to start observing for us, and you're covered by all the insurances and everything else. During that evening, on the same evening of the 13th, it's going to be a busy weekend, this one. We've got the SAMM presentation evening. Now, if you can make that one, please do, because at that particular one, it will be your opportunity to take the stage and have your photograph taken. We will be presenting, obviously, for people who have passed their test, but also for the new observers who are signed off. You'll be welcomed and officially announced as as local observers at that event. So a bit of a social as well. Presentation evening on the 13th. On the 14th of April, we've got the Raven Bigger, Better Breakfast. Huge event for those of you who haven't been. Usually 3,000 plus bikes. It's the real season opener. Very good one for us. The MDU will be going up there. We would like some volunteers. It'd be great if we can have some new volunteers. Perhaps some of our new local observers might like to come along and help us on the day. Drop me an email, drop me a text message or a message any way you like. Let me know if you're available. Then we have the 28th of April, of course, Bike for Life. Now, I know a number of people have already volunteered to assist Barry and the Raven Riders team with the parking, which is absolutely fantastic, and thank you for that. Once again, if you are interested in supporting us on the stand, there is only a finite number of people that we can actually have because of the passes. But if you are, we're looking for new blood. It will be great. You've been through the experience, and some of you new observers, having just gone through it, it will be fresh in your mind. It will be really, really good if some of you might be able to put your name down. After that, of course, from that event, we generally get a lot of people who want to do free tasters. So we have a joint free taster day lined up with ROSPA on the 19th of May at Montford Bridge. Usually a very, very successful event for us. And that one there, once again, I'd like as many volunteers as we can have from the observer side. It'll be a great day. Daryl and I, once again, will not necessarily be observing unless we have to. We will be coordinating and speaking to people. So it leaves plenty of opportunities for you guys to get out there and to actually observe people and hopefully bring them on board. On the 9th of June, we've got the Cosford Air Show. That's usually very, very tight on tickets. So that's maybe something we'll need to talk about nearer the time. Obviously, they only allocate so many tickets for that. So that's something we'll have to look at. And then we do hope to organise a slow riding event sometime in the early part of the year, which will be open to everybody. We've just got to find a venue. If anybody knows a venue that we can use, the training ground that we had at Cosford was fantastic. But of course, we've now lost Alex Clark, and Alex was the guy that organised that for us. So that may not be on the agenda anymore. We may need to find somewhere else. I don't know if Barry, Shred, if you have any contacts within the CBT world now that has any particular training space that we might be able to look at. Obviously, we're looking for a very large, flat, tarmacked quadrangle. We want a good surface, and if we can get that, that would be fantastic. Okay, so really that's me on the events. Now, what I'm going to do now is just share my screen, so you'll be pleased to say that see that I'm going to disappear from your view. And I just want to run through a couple of things here now that have come up from the meeting. So there was some confusion, I believe, from some quarters on where we go with the marking. And I've had a couple of comments back. So what I'll be attaching to this email is a guide that I've just put together. And this guide is a very, very specific guide on exactly how to mark associates. Okay, now this really gives best practice. As you can see here, it's remaining consistent with the Iron Rose smart riding standards. This would also apply, I'm sure, to cars as well, but it really just goes through what is a good score and how do you score. So we want to benchmark this. We want to be sure that we're all on the same page. So really, just to skim through it, because you can read it all yourselves, it goes through exactly what the examiners have on their sheet. And that 3 requires development that fails to consistently demonstrate the competency. Now, consistently is the key there, because they may show you, they may on occasions do it and do it right. They may show you that, you know, they're able to demonstrate that on some occasions they are following whatever that particular competency is, but they're not doing it consistently. If that's the case, it's most definitely a 3 and requires development. We should not be afraid of issuing 3s. We'll come to that in a moment. 2, satisfactory, is consistently demonstrates the competency. So this is test standard, okay? No less. That doesn't mean average. It's not good, bad, and average. This is really important to understand. It is not good, bad, and average. That's very easy to think about when you've got 1, 2, 3, isn't it? Number 2 is test standard. So we should not be issuing 2s unless they have consistently demonstrated the competency. So therefore, let me ask you the question, should you be allocating a 2 on a first ride? Probably not, because you haven't had a chance to see them consistently demonstrate a competency. Now, would we put a 3 on a first ride if they were doing it, you know, they didn't miss a signal or they hit all their speed limits? Would we put a 3? The answer to that is if they were absolutely bang on with everything that they did, you've got 2 choices. One, you can either put a comment in there and say, leave the mark out. So rather than putting a 3 in there, you might say, observed all speed limits, excellent. You do not have to mark it. It's not obligatory to mark it. We'll come to that in a moment. What you could do is decide to mark them on the second run. So on the next run, when you go out, you've got your DP2, your development plan 2, and on DP2 you could go out with them and you could actually then find that yet again they've hit all their speed limits every single time. You might then mark them down as a 2, satisfactory. Now, a 1 is commended. That is, not only you consistently demonstrate the competency to a high standard with confidence, showing understanding, but also that you've got interaction between this and other competencies. So in other words, you flow. Everything flows. You've followed those riders before. You just know that they get it. Everything comes naturally. Everything, it's like motorcycle ballet. Everything is all flowing together. That's what we're looking for a 1. I would never expect anybody to be issuing a 1 on the first ride or 2. A 1 is exceptional. Really, that is at a first level. And a first level needs demonstrating. You cannot do that on a first ride, or probably even a second ride. I would argue the fact that you would not know well enough as to whether that was consistent and consistent with other competencies. Because probably they might be good in one particular area, but if they can't integrate that with other competencies, well then that simply isn't going to be a 1. We'll come to that a little bit more. The advanced standard. The competency level is 2. So it goes through a little bit here, and I've gone through to actually show you what a first is, what the criteria is to get a first. No grade 3s allowed. The examiner has the discretion to recommend a candidate even if they score a 2 in no more than 3 categories, but they can only be spoken thought, car, vehicle sympathy and eco driving, and any other category for car, or 2 other categories for bike, except for safety and legality and slow manoeuvring. Must have a 1 in those. Otherwise, it can't be a first. Okay, and the remainder needs to be 1s. So I won't go through this in detail, but we've got the standard here, a score of 3. What does that mean? And there's some examples here, okay, exactly how that works. A score of 2. Once again, they've mastered the competence and use it consistently. Consistently means they demonstrate the competency at all times, whether that demonstration is by delivering the action or by clearly deciding not to deliver it. So in that example, we talk about timed and executed mirror updates, carrying out shoulder checks and blind spot checks when needed. They don't need to do them by rote, but they do when they discern that the situational hazard requires it. So if there is not a need to do it, we don't want to see them doing it. And that also falls into a 2, as long as they have a genuine reason why they didn't do it, and it's an acceptable reason to you. That is as much to their credit as if they did it. We certainly don't want anybody to be doing it by rote. And I'm going to let you read through this because I just need to go on to a couple of slides that I want to run through in a little bit more detail. So the score of 1, it does mean that it is not only delivering consistently through the ride, but they're being delivered to a very, very high standard at all times in a confident manner. And they will show their mastery of the individual competencies. And how will you understand this? How will you mark it? Well, you want to see all these things coming together, but then this is the important thing. The difference between a 2 and a 1 is your interpretation of their ride. So the examiners will use the word that they demonstrate flare or sparkle. Now this is really, flare or sparkle cannot be quantified in writing. That is something that your experience as an observer will come into play. And if you find that everything just flows together, their riding is a total synergy and everything is really coming together, you just know that these people in front of you are riding to a first level. Then, of course, that's when you want to be marking them down as a 1. But I would emphasize, do not be afraid to mark people as a 2 if they are at test competency level, because that's what it is. That is a really good score. And I think we need to really make sure that people understand all of that at the very beginning. So really, to go out and actually pre-frame with them what 1, 2, and 3 means is really important. So make it clear to people at the very beginning when you meet them that 3 is not bad. It doesn't mean that you are a bad rider. It doesn't mean that it's bad, good, bad, average, and good. It's not that at all. 1 is an exceptional something to aspire to. 2 is a test pass. So a little bit about how do we keep the associate motivated when it's very tempting sometimes, isn't it? You want to keep them motivated. So you want to move up and give them a 2 as quickly as you possibly can. Because you've now been out with them 3 times and you've got 3, 3, and 3 because they're not yet competent. Well, that's fine. It doesn't mean they're bad. It means there is more work to be done to get them to that level. If you are working hard at that and it's a problem, I'd recommend that you always put the comments in there. Please do not just put 3 in a box and put nothing against it. Please put the comments in there. That's really, really important because that gives that it's more to do with the comments than it is to do with the marks. And that will come through in here. Okay. So when we're talking about a 2, it will only be given when there's a consistent achievement of the competence. And likewise, 1, there needs to be a significant demonstration of flow and the interaction between different competencies. So what that means is that this is answering the question about what about if somebody rides well this time and I mark them as a 1, and then I go out next time and they don't, and I want to mark them as a 3. The reality is they should never have been marked as a 1 until you are absolutely sure that they are riding at that level of competency. It's better to mark them as a 3 until you get there, a 3 progressing to a 2, and then only 1 when you are absolutely sure. Once they've reached that level, then you know that they can do it because they've demonstrated it on a regular and consistent basis. We are sometimes too quick to want to mark 2s and 1s. That's the reality of it. We don't want to be doing that. We want to be keeping it real and using your skills, your verbal skills, and we want to be using your comments to incentivize the associate. A little bit about how to deal with it if your associate wants to get a first and to manage the expectations, not to overmark them, because otherwise that doesn't do them any favors, it doesn't do you any favors, and keep pointing out the human factors on a particular day. Because on a particular day, we've all done it, we're all open to it and guilty of it. There's no guarantee that there'll always be a top class ride. Something can get in the way, okay? So practice is the best tool, and just accept occasionally those sort of things happen. So how do I explain if some of my associates' scores drop after a few rides? Well, in reality, you don't want that to be happening, because if you want that to be happening, you haven't really assessed. But if something really did happen and you had to drop a competency because they regularly started to exhibit poor skills in an area that you have already marked, then under exceptional circumstances, you might need to mark them down. But we would only do that under exception. All right. So really, that would only be after a couple of rides. You wouldn't go out on one ride and find that they've dropped and then mark them down. But if after 3 rides you found that they are not maintaining that competency that they had previously maintained, there might be an issue. You need to find out what that issue is. It might be something to do with some of the other skills that they've taken on has now affected it. Maybe they were, maybe that their progression was good and now you've changed their road positioning. They're doing things in a different way. It could be something that you helped them change, which has affected something previously. So you need to reflect on whether they truly warranted the higher score earlier on. And remember that anything above 3, the associate must demonstrate consistency. Have they just not done it often enough? Okay, so we've all got to accept we have off days. If you manage the expectations properly and read through this guide, you will actually see exactly what it is you need to do. Any questions, please come back to me on it. I will attach that to this email. Or maybe, yeah, I'll attach it to this email. Okay, so I just really want to finally run through something on the same subject, really. Now, Daryl mentioned to you, I think, membership by portfolio. Membership by portfolio is the new group sign-off, but it's not something that we're going to be majoring on as a group at this stage. What I'm going to do is just run through to a particular slide. In fact, if I come out of that at the moment, it's probably easier that I just come down to the bit that I want and run through from here. Right. Okay. So there are some relevant slides here that I just really want to bring in. So keep it simple, keep it specific, and be honest. So coming back to what we were just talking about, 3 means requires development, i.e. not a test standard. 2 means satisfactory, has reached test standard. That takes some getting to. And 1 means commendable, i.e. a potential first. Please do not use half marks. 3 out of 2 or 2.5 means absolutely nothing at all. So please don't do that. Okay? So let's just have a little look at a development, a DP sheet, a development plan sheet. And let's say this is run 1. So we've actually got here on this particular one, let's have a look. Right. So we're now at run 1. Okay. So it's an assessment drive or ride. Do we need to score anything on there at all? Should we just put some comments in here? Because the first run, do bear in mind that we're just assessing them and going from there. And the likelihood is they're going to be all 3s. Now, if you feel that's a problem for you and you do not want to issue 3s, what I would say is you do not have to issue a score in every single thing. You can put a comment in this box here and look to score them on the next run. But at the same time, we do want some scores in here. We don't want you literally going through, sorry, I've just gone forward a few slides there. We don't want you literally going through and marking nothing at all, because that would be silly. Just trying to get back on these slides. Right, just bear with me a moment. I'll just come back to here. Right, okay. That's where I think we was. Okay, so how can we deal with and come up with an effective development plan to deal with the fact? Now on this one, we've got 17 threes, okay? So what we want them to do is to go away, read, learn, understand the Advanced Rider book, and then we want a SMART development plan. And I think most of us know what SMART is. It's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So we want people to be doing it, not just go away and learn. We want them to be particularly, specifically working in certain areas. And what we want to be doing as observers is prioritizing which of these, when we go out on that initial ride with them, we need to be prioritizing which of these particular competencies we want them to work on first. Okay, so if we're working on the competency, we can give them a development plan to go away with. Now, there's lots of threes here. There's 17 threes in actual fact, and that's fine because in the observer comments, we say a satisfactory first run, safe and legal. Observation information is the key for the whole riding plan, hazard awareness and prioritization, demonstration ride proved to be useful, development plan. Now, we've got read and learn and understand ARC, the Advanced Rider course book that we have. Okay, look further ahead and maintain and plan earlier. More evaluation and more information is good. Is that realistic and time bound? Well, there's no timing really other than read and learn it. We're talking about the whole book. So they've got to learn the whole book before the next ride or before the end of the course. We've got nothing at all specific there. So we want a development plan that's specific to the prioritized areas. So if we're working on road positioning, then we might not, we may then just put a development plan in there specifically to read pages da-da-da to da-da-da-da before the next ride and to practice looking ahead, etc., etc., etc. Smart, specific, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So that's where we're going to be setting it, rather than just having something which is very generalized. If we look at run 2 now, we've gone to something a little bit different. So on run 2, everything is scored. So we've got scores on every single thing. Do we really want to do that? I don't think we do. Why do we want to blow someone's mind with all of these scores? Let's look at the area of competency. Let's chunk it into areas of competency and work on getting through these areas of competency. Once somebody is competent in a particular area, they've demonstrated they're at a 2 or even a 1 on a regular basis and consistent basis, then we sign them off on that and we do not then have to go back to that again. Okay? Now this one says a test standard on 19 competencies. But the only evidence we've got provided here was on overtaking, one good overtake. Well, is that evidence of test competency? No, it's not. That really isn't sufficient. We want something, a structured plan, which goes into a little bit more detail. Limit points. Down here, we've got nearly a 2. Is that evidence of competency? No. If it's nearly a 2, it's a 3. Okay? We've got to be clear and specific. Development plan, slow speed turning, carry on with improvements, practice and repeat. Is that smart? No, it's not. We want to be very specific. And you can have a look through here. It's just a myriad of information. It's going to blow somebody's mind. They've got too much information. So keep it very specific to the actual things that you're covering at the time and work on that development plan, work on that particular competency to a point where they're signed off to a 2 or a 1 level and go from there. So if you have a look at that run sheet, it might be familiar to you. There's lots of scores on there. Do we want to be putting lots of scores? Not really. We want to keep it smart and specific. Is there any evidence of competency? Well, no, we never needed it before. Well, guess what we do now? We need to have an evidence of competency on there. So what's required on a good run sheet? Let's just look at a little spreadsheet, something I might put forward together on the for the LOAs. If it's of any use, let me know. And this will be like a spreadsheet. Now you can see on this one here, we've got lots and lots of information. So it's a matrix showing the development of the associate. What does it show? Evidence of competency? Okay, yes or no? Question, what does the local observer assessor require? What we want is evidence of competency. So we want to see progression from run 1 right the way through to run 10. That's what we're looking for. By the way, if anybody wants this spreadsheet, I can produce and send you a copy of the spreadsheet, okay, which may be a useful tool for LOAs. So let's just break it down a little bit. Let's have a look at this. This one here, there's 10 observed sessions. What do we notice? Fitness to ride. When we look at all the sheets, that hasn't been covered in fitness to ride and eyesight was never checked until run 10. Or something wrong there, isn't there? So again, it's really checking. That should have been done in the first run, of course, not the last run. So why was it not actually checked? That's an important point. That should have been checked in the first one. And then, of course, thereafter, we don't need to check it again. So points to consider, we need to get LOAs and national observers work together as a team. They're both working to get this person through. The LOA needs to see the progression. The national observer also needs to see the progression. They need to be working as a team. So have a look at the run sheets. Have a chat with your LOA. Talk to them. Say, how's it going? Compare it to the previous one. Your LOAs might want to run a spreadsheet like I just demonstrated, and I will be happy to put together for people. Identify the main areas for improvement, the 3s that require development. Remember the musts, the shoulds, and the coulds, okay? And then put your comments and development plan to reflect the 3s. That's what we're working on. And make it smart. Can it be achieved in 2 weeks, i.e. limit points? And if so, then practice limit points, ride roads you know well, look for the limit point, try to consistently identify the limit point, and practice matching your speed with the limit point. So if we then look at this one, again, far too much scoring on here. This is a first run, okay? And on the first run, we've got a number of 2s. So we may decide that that's probably, unless somebody's an exceptionally talented individual, it may be inappropriate to have so many 2s. Maybe we're trying to be too kind and make them feel good about joining the IAM. We don't want to put them off. Just explain at the beginning that a 3 is not bad. I must keep banging this home. A 3 is not a poor ride. It's just not yet at advanced standard. And the consistency required to get an advanced standard. I make no apology for keep banging on about this and repeating it. Okay. The other thing is here that obviously it's gonna blow their minds. So on that one, there was no comments or evidence provided for 13 of the 2s awarded. The associate may well be at the standard, but have they shown consistency? So it's a first run and we're giving them 2s. How do we know that that wasn't a fluke? How do we know that they're riding at that consistent level? That can't really be done. So why are we doing it? Is it because we want to be kind? We're not there to be kind. We're there to encourage, but we can do that through the comments, through our verbal comments, through our assistance, through our way of putting things to people. So consistency, once is an instance, twice is a coincidence, 3 or more times shows a pattern or a trend. So what happens to you if you don't mark a competency? Nothing. If you're not happy, don't mark it, put a comment, and then mark it next time. Only mark it once you're satisfied that either they're not at that level, you're working on a certain thing. Once you're satisfied that they are consistently competent, mark it and park it. So you don't have to then go back to it. No need to go back unless absolutely necessary by exception. And this is where you find that they are on a consistent level, they're failing it again. So that can be counterproductive. So then you might just need to address that. I wouldn't suggest that you downmark them straight away, but I would suggest that you pick up with them and say, look, we've already cleared you off as competent on this particular area, and now you've dropped back. So from there, can I please address this with you? What's happening? Why? And then identify why that might be happening. Okay. So on this one here, if we look at this, run 1, we're looking at the threes which require development. Would it be smart to comment on all 17 threes and try and write a development plan to deal with all of them? No. If so, why mark them? Mark the threes in the area and the competencies that you are deciding to work on. That is the areas that you feel need the immediate prioritization. So you would have already put it into a priority plan. You might be looking, having taken them out in their first run, that positioning is their most important thing. So you'll work on positioning first, and then you'll mark it down. Will the associate have time to develop all the areas before the next session? Well, on this one, no. They've got 17 threes to work on. That's going to blow their mind. How are they going to do it? Where do they put their focus? How do they concentrate? What part of the book do they read? Do they read it all? No. Keep it specific. And what are the main areas for improvement? Pick up the most important, work towards getting them up to test standard. Must, shoulds and coulds. Not too much improved, but still needs work. If it still needs work, it is a 3. So any 2 requires evidence of competency. Even on the first run, any 2 requires evidence of competency. There's an example for you. Associate demonstrated a very good knowledge of understanding the reasons for pre-drive, pre-ride checks, whatever it might be. They were done with good application, etc., etc., etc. Okay. More practice and polish will develop to a 1, however satisfactory 2 this time. That needs to go into the comments box, obviously at the end. You're not going to get that all into the comments box on the side. That will be in the main evidence of competency in the end. And then look at the 3s that require development. So comments should identify the issues, and then it should go down into the development plan on how to rectify the issues. So here we are. There's information, observations, and scanning. And then down in the development plan, work towards lifting your observations, look further ahead, develop earlier anticipation of approaching hazards and priorities. Need to use mirrors more, blah, 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 blah. So you get the message, okay? And then your development plan, you've got 17 threes on run 1. That isn't smart. We've already covered that off. So we want something that's much more comprehensive than that. And really that's what we need to be doing it. And if you look towards that, then that is far more comprehensive. That just gives you much more information, or give them much more information as to what we're expecting from them. So to go back to our sheet, run 1 identifies the 3s. We prioritise those, and if we don't want to mark them all 3s, and you might just want to put some comments in and mark nothing at all. The development plan identifies most pressing issues, so we're coming back to SMART. That should be your focus for the next run. Check of, on the second run, we check the first run, the first development plan, to ensure that the issues from development plan 1 are addressed and, if possible, resolved. If they have achieved a 2 and there's evidence of competency so that the LOA can be sure, and you're absolutely sure you've seen it on a couple of runs and it really is consistent and they've shown and demonstrated they know it, you might want to mark that a 2 and mark it and park it. If not resolved, it's still a 3. It's not nearly a 2. It's a 3. Keep working on it. And what is the point in moving on to the next discipline until you've resolved the last one? So it's a modular process that we're working through, chunking down and working through a modular process. So to summarize then, run 1 identifies the main issues, and obviously that's when you make the development plan. That's a must. Run 2, you look at the development plan from run 1, assess if it's better or at the standard. If not, a development plan is made. It could even be the same as run 1 if they haven't yet actually demonstrated they've taken it on board. Run 3 and above, assess issues from the previous runs. If they still require work, it's a 3, and continue to work on that competency until you're happy. That is a must. The shoulds and the coulds then can be introduced as appropriate. That's when we're trying to get them to a higher level, but we've got to get them to test standard. That's what we're looking for. Comments included in your development plan set the assessor and the observer up for the next run. That's what you need to be thinking about. And if a competency is reached, evidence required, then mark it and park it and move on to the next competency. And each run should consistently and continually assess issues from the previous runs and move on through the whole of the competency until satisfied that all of those competencies have been consistently demonstrated. Okay, and a 2 and a 1 in the marking guide requires evidence of competency in the written sections. So at that point, I shall stop the share and come back to finishing off. So I hope you found that useful. If there's any questions or queries around that, please come back to me. But really, it's about using common sense and about keeping it to sensible proportions, not trying to overload the associate with too much information. Really making sure that you only mark at the higher level when you are confident that it's consistent. You don't have to mark at all. You do not have to go through putting loads of 3s in. You can put comments in, but just work in chunks and get them to that point. When you've worked through chunk 1 and you're happy with that competency, you know that working at that level, only then move on to the next competency. Don't try and rush it. Hope that helps. Sorry it's gone on a little while. I just thought trying to put that all down into a written form will be an absolute nightmare. So on that point, I shall actually stop the video, and I would simply say that, yeah, any questions, give me a call, send me an email, or send me a text, however you want to do it. Be delighted to help if I can in any way, shape or form. And if ever you need Daryl or myself to actually come out with you for anything at all, if you're having any issues, then please, 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 then do let us know, and we'd be more than happy to do that. Okay, so at that point, I'm going to stop the recording and wish you all the best and see you all soon.